What's up, Red Tree Church? How's everybody doing this morning? Woo, 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 man. We are pumped up that you chose to be here with us this morning. We know in Springfield, Missouri, you have as many options to eat at a Chinese restaurant as you do to go to a church. And so it's too early for Chinese food, so you chose to be here. So thank you. We appreciate that. Today, we are covering a subject that we do feel like we needed to give some forewarning to parents that may have some younger children. If anybody under 5th grade and under is in here, you may want to go ahead and check into our children's ministry. At this time, we'll give you a little bit more time. Our purpose at Red Tree Church is to never fake it till we make it. If you've been here before, sometimes you hear things said from stage, and you're like, wow, I can't believe they said that. Because we're not playing. We want to do life with each other. Our goal is to help you to discover faith, or at least begin to wade into the waters of becoming skeptical of faith, and then maybe moving you a little bit closer to investigating faith. The greatest win for us is for you to experience Christ, and then for you to bring somebody with you to experience Christ as well. Like that's what we call the win at Red Tree Church. And so what we've realized is if a church won't try to cover up things and make them seem like they're really not that significant when they really are, God has an opportunity. His Holy Spirit has power to move. And we came in early this morning, and we released Holy Spirit all up in here this morning. So actually, some of you are like, this is a weird church. This is why I didn't want to go here. No, I'm kidding. But we do want you to hopefully sit back and hear some people share their stories of some opportunities they've had to grow in their faith, discover their faith. But before we do that, I did want to push these books again real quick. This is not my book that I wrote, so calm down. Actually, the author's name is Bob Goff. He's a genius, multi-millionaire guy that was a lawyer, and he gave up being a lawyer, and now he writes books, and he's still a genius, multi-millionaire. Because we sell his books. And so, anyway, this is called Live in Grace and Walk in Love. This is a daily devotional book, and it's an awesome opportunity for you to get into the Word. I'm talking like 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops, but it's a great starter for you. If you feel like maybe you're not in the Word as much as you should be or want to be, we're going to have these out here at the back of the table on the right-hand side. We want you to pick them up. We've had someone come up and say, hey, listen, I think everybody in our church should have one. And so I want to make a generous donation. And so they did. So I think we have 12 of them now that have already been paid for. But if you can pay for them as well, that would help, because then we can go buy more so someone else can get one also. But if you're here and you're like, bro, I don't have $12, I got $2. Throw down $2 and you can have a book for $2. Or if you don't have $2 and you want it for free, it's covered. Don't worry about it, okay? So if you want a book, there's 12 of them back there. Now, don't take one for you, your grandma, and your aunt that ain't here, okay? I know I shouldn't have to say stuff like that, but I do, okay? Anyways, if you're here, if you're present, sorry, Facebook, but if you're present, we want to get these in your hands. And actually, anybody want one around here close that I can? You want one? Okay, go ahead. You got to come up because they got sharp corners, and I'm afraid that we'll get sued if I hit you with that. No, I mean, not to judge you, because I don't know. So anyway, great transition, fantastic. Welcome to Red Tree. Welcome to Red Tree Church. Yeah. So today, what we're going to be doing is continue this series called The Grudge. The verse that we've been hanging on to, and it's a verse that, just to be honest, at times I do not like. I know some of you don't like, because here's the deal. There's not an asterisk with this verse that gives anybody like an out. Like, it doesn't mean like, okay, well, not her or not him, right? Nope, that's not there. But it'll be up on the screen. Ephesians 4:32. It's very complicated. It seems simple, but this is the stuff that makes Christianity complicated. This is Jesus, or Paul writing this. He says this, listen, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other. Now watch what he says. He has to throw this at the end. Just as Christ, God forgave you. There's no options in this thing. If you are a Christ follower, if you say that you've given your life to Jesus, we are obligated, we're given a command to forgive people the way that God, Jesus, has forgiven you. And I don't know about you, but me as a Christ follower, I'm very thankful that Jesus has forgiven me, because I was at nowhere. I was not a great prize for him to win, but he still accepted me, allowed me to follow him. And so I've grown a lot. I accepted Christ when I was 9 years old. And what an awesome story that is. But today, I want you to hear from two individuals and their stories. This is Terri. Terri, say hi.
Hi.
Go. Yeah. Wow, all right. We got some fans.
Chick-fil-A crew over there.
Oh, Chick-fil-A in the house. Whatever, you didn't bring us anything. You're not open on Sunday. Anyway, Gerald, not bitter. Gerald, this is Gerald. You guys got Gerald. Okay. Oh, yeah. And you also work at Chick-fil-A. That's right, yeah. So, ladies, you get to come up next week from Chick-fil-A, and gentlemen from Chick-fil-A, you guys are all up next week. So, hey, let's just dive into this conversation. I hope that's what this is and becomes. I know both of your stories. I know both of you have opportunities to share so that the church can learn from that, so that those on Facebook can hear. And so if you know anything about public speaking, people say they'd rather die than public speak. And so just pray for them as they begin to share. Terri, to start things out, why don't you just kind of share a little bit of where you grew up, how long you've been coming to Red Tree, and then we'll jump over to Gerald and we'll come back to you.
So I was born in Branson, and my mom was a waitress, and my dad grew up Christian. He went to C of O, and he was a Greene County Sheriff's deputy for a while here. And so this is where I started growing up, but I've lived all over the country because he moved around a lot, and I ended up with him. And we came to Red Tree in 2012 when Red Tree had just started launching.
Yeah, we were actually out knocking on doors,
yep.
and you
Thank
came.
God for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a long time. Gerald?
Hey guys, I'm Gerald, and I grew up, most of my life I grew up in southeast Missouri in a small town called Parma with my grandparents. I moved up here in 2006 to get married to my beautiful wife, and we've been coming to Red Tree for about 5 years. We were invited by the Hamiltons, and my son really liked the place, and so we're like, you know what, we might as well stay because he likes it.
Wow, thank you. Appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
Here we are, 5 years later.
Yeah. Okay, Gerald, thank you. You're done. Go ahead if you want to give your mic up. We appreciate you. Appreciate you coming up. I'm going to work on forgiving you. And so, Gerald and his family have been at Red Tree 5-6 years, like you said. One of the cool things about Gerald is Gerald served in multiple places at Red Tree, and so is your wife. Elion, man, I remember that dude coming in early, setting up over at the schools when we were first getting going. That was cool. And same for Terri. I mean, Terri and JC and Gage, and I mean, your family has been plugged in and serving, and actually Terry's now an administrative assistant for Red Tree, and so does a great job there. Yeah. Terri, if you would just kind of tell us a little about maybe your mom and dad's relationship and what that looked like.
Well, they divorced when I was 4, and my dad got custody of my younger brother and I. And so then we lived with him growing up until I was 14. And to go further into that, so my dad got custody of us when I was 4. My brother was about 2 years younger than me. And he kind of moved all over, moved us away from my mom. I didn't see my mom hardly at all growing up. And the first time my dad started sexually abusing my brother and myself. The first time I remember it happening, I think I was in 2nd grade. And then he got a girlfriend around the time I was in 4th grade. And when she came into the picture, other abuse started happening, more physical abuse than had been previously happening, but then also they wouldn't let us eat. They would withhold food from us. We got in trouble if we got into food. We got locked in our rooms and couldn't use the bathroom. And they said later that we probably survived on school lunches for a lot of those years. And what was really twisted about it is that a lot of times the sexual abuse was tied to food, meaning that if we did certain things with my dad, then we could get food. And so to this day, there are certain foods that I see, and it takes me right back there. And I think about that, whatever that was. I just think about it all again.
And you said this was around 2nd grade is when this...
When it started, yeah.
When it started, okay. All right. Gerald, share with us a little bit of kind of maybe some things that happened in your life.
So my I remember my mom mainly because my parents got divorced or they separated when I was just a baby. So I don't have any memories of my dad growing up. And my mom died when I was 5, so I went to live with my grandparents. And I remember going through, like, growing up, being a kid, and just kind of mad at God because I look at all these other people, all my friends who have parents, who have, and this kind of sounds petty, but they would go for Christmas and they would get presents from their parents, and then they would get presents from their grandparents. And I didn't have that. My grandparents were now my parents. And I grew up mad a lot at God because, one, I didn't know my dad, and that's something that as a guy I really needed. It's just that, that male figure in my life. Now, I have my grandpa, don't get me wrong, and he's a great guy, but it's just not the same as knowing who your dad is. We had one picture of him growing up, and it was more just like a profile. And I think that's how life was, because when we talked about him and our families, he was always a bad guy. He was the guy who did drugs and left my mom high and dry in a place where she was broke, and it was out of desperation that she had to come back to Missouri, where my grandparents live, and join the military, or go back into the military. And ultimately, being in the military is why she died. So now, not only is my feelings towards my dad anger, because now he put my mom into a spot where, she needed to go and be in a place where she was ultimately killed. But it's not just anger at God, but it's anger at my dad now also. So I grew up with that part of my life really, really bitter.
Yeah.
For a long, long time.
So how old do you think you were when you first started, like, putting this together of, like, man, my dad did this to my mom, and he's put me in this situation? Like, is there ever, like, a moment that you were a certain age and all of a sudden it hit you like, I hate that guy?
I'd probably say I was probably about 12 or 13. I really was struggling with feelings at that time, so
Yeah.
I wrote everything down in poems that really helped.
Yeah.
But I do remember writing a few poems about my dad and just how, like, I don't understand how he can leave his kids. Because if I was a dad, I wouldn't ever want to be away.
Yeah.
And I think also that was about the time where I was like, I am going to be a good dad.
Yeah.
If I have a family, I'm going to be a good husband.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there for my kids.
Yeah. Okay. Terri, how did you and your mom get out of this situation?
Well, my mom wasn't there, but my younger brother
Okay.
was there. And when I was 14, my brother jumped out of the second-story window. He was locked in his room. I wasn't home at the time. And he jumped out of this window, and he went to the neighbors and told them what was happening. And during that time, I came home with my dad's girlfriend, and they couldn't find Chris. And so I had seen a cop car out in front of the neighbor's house and asked them, can I just go see if he's there? I don't remember saying anything about the cop car. And I went over there, and there was a police officer there. They had called the police because Chris told them what was going on. Or Chris told them about all of the abuse except for the sexual abuse. again, being a guy, I think that was a lot harder on my brother than it was on me. I mean, to this day, he's a drug addict. But so when I got over there and this cop was there and they're like, you're not going back over there, I was this police officer standing there with a gun. I did not feel like could protect me from them. I insisted that we had to go back. If we didn't go back, they were going to kill us. I had told my dad at one point, maybe a year before that I wanted to go live with my mom, and he told me that he was going to send me to my mom in a box if I wanted to go there. And I didn't know what that meant, and then later his girlfriend was like, he means he's going to kill you. So we're there with this cop. They put us into foster care. I think we were in foster care for about a week, and they had gone to do like the home visit and everything, and it was going to be okay for us to go back because they took the locks off the doors. And so we went back, and things were worse, and they were mad now, obviously. And so one night, while we were in foster care that week, we had gone to church, and I believed in God when I was really little. My dad's girlfriend was an atheist, and I started saying, well, I'm an atheist. I think it was a good way to connect with her at the time. And so we went to church, and I reconnected with God just a little bit. I was kind of, well, maybe. And we went back to my dad's house. One night I was laying in bed after it had just been bad. And I was laying in bed, and I remember praying, God, if you are real, please get us out of this. And just testing him almost. And I felt like he told me that I needed to go to school the next day and tell them about the sexual abuse. And so that's what I did. And then we were removed from his home from there and went back into foster care. And I remember just being scared the whole time. I just knew. I remember one time we went to a court hearing, and they drove by us in their car, and my brother and I are ducking down beneath the seats because I know that some of you have been through things like this, and when you're abused like that and somebody has that much control over you, you literally feel like nobody can save you from that, and nobody will be able to keep them from hurting you anymore.
Gerald, was there a time when, as you're growing up, and you when's the first time you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could contact my dad? Or did you ever think that you wish you could contact your dad, find out who he is?
Yeah, there was a lot of times actually growing up that I wanted to see if I can find him. It's hard though whenever the internet kind of just got started, right? So there wasn't a whole bunch of options, at least that I knew of. Yeah. Being a teenager. And I remember once I graduated high school, I sat down and I searched, Gerald Murray, because me and my dad have the same name. I thought maybe that's a lot easier because we have the same name. I know his name. Yeah. And I didn't have anything really to go on. I didn't know his age. I didn't know his birth date. The last time I heard, he lived in New Jersey, so that could be wrong or whatever. And so if you just sit down and you try to Google search Gerald Murray, you're going to find millions of hits, So I wanted to find him. And I think I just wanted to find him so I can give him a piece of my mind. Yeah. Not really to start a relationship or anything. I just wanted to tell him how bad I felt, because I think I always grew up thinking if you have a grudge with somebody, you need to let them know. That way you aren't the one just feeling bad. They got to feel bad too.
Right, yeah. You don't want to do this alone.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. But after a while, I just stopped trying because I'm like, my grandparents have lived in the exact same spot for 40 years. So he's known where they were.
Yeah.
You know, they've had the same phone number for about that long. So he could have found them at any point in time. That's what I'm thinking.
Sure.
He could have found them at any point in time. He just doesn't want to. And if he doesn't want to find me and my sister, then I don't want to find him.
Yeah. Yeah. So Terri, tell us a little bit more as you're leading up to getting to this spot of, now you're back in the court again. You see your dad drive by. What was next? What's the next piece? I know it may be too big of a jump to go to when you get married, but what's the pieces in between that?
Yeah, so my dad was on the run for several years. It was in 1991 that we left his house, and then in 1994 he got caught, or 93 he got caught, and they actually released him. They caught him in Missouri, but Pennsylvania, which is where we were, didn't want to extradite him. So my mom and I wrote letters saying we would sell everything down to the garden hose if they would please prosecute him. We didn't have to do that, but they did arrest him, and they took him to Pennsylvania. So then we went up there for the hearing, and went through the hearing, and he was sentenced to 11 and a half to 22 and a half years in prison, and testified in that and everything. And then he's in jail, and I'm glad he's in jail. Hate him very much, and didn't know how to deal with all the things that had been done. Didn't have a strong group of people around me. Didn't have a family that went to church. I went to church a little bit, and I had accepted Christ when I was in foster care before we moved in with my mom. But so while he was in prison, I'm just kind of, 17. I was about 17 when he went into prison, and then I lived a little wild until I was about 22 and met my husband, and then we lived a little wild together at first. I hope it's okay to say that.
That's probably all we need to know concerning that.
But we're married now. So we're coming up on 17 years of marriage this June. But
That's her husband.
Glad he's happy.
Yeah.
So I met my husband, and we got married, and he had his baggage, I had my baggage, and we were a blended family, and we had infertility. So all of that was just, and I'm dealing with the issues that I had with my dad. And when I was in counseling, when I was a teenager, I had a counselor. I don't know if they said it to me or to my mom, but they said girls like you either end up really promiscuous or terrified of intimacy. And so I, at the time, thought, okay, I'm either going to be really promiscuous or I'm going to be scared of intimacy. And there was a period of time where I thought men were scary. There was nothing safe about a man. But so I got married. My dad's in prison. We're struggling because it was just hard. And I didn't go to counseling. I'd had bad experiences with counseling when I was younger. Did not want to go to counseling and try and figure this out. We were going to churches and kind of church hopping for a little while, and then we went to a certain church for a while, and I went about 50% of the time that I was able to. Loved God, but definitely had a lot of hatred and fear that I was holding on to, and had a wall between me and God that I didn't even know. I thought, well, my dad hasn't admitted to what he's done, and he hasn't asked for forgiveness, and so I don't have to forgive him, and I just thought I could stay in that.
Yeah. Gerald, what happened in you to where you decided, you know what, I think I do want to meet my dad? What was the feelings? What was the process of that?
Well, I woke up one morning, it was 2017, and it was in August, and I woke up, and I looked at my phone, and there was a text message from a number I didn't know. I'm sorry, I got it on Facebook. It was a Facebook Messenger from, and it said, "Hey, I'm your dad. I just wanted to talk to you." And I'm like, "Yeah, So I get on Facebook because and I look up, Gerald Murray on Facebook, and I noticed that this one guy has like 5 different Facebook profiles, and I'm like, well, somebody's trying to scam somebody. But on there's a picture, right? And I was like, Jessica, like I woke her up, she's still asleep. I was on my way to work. I was like, Jessica, this guy's saying he's my dad. I'm gonna look at this, and she's like, yep, that's him.
gotta be him.
Like he looks just like me.
Good looking guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
And I was like, and Jessica was like, yeah, that's him. You could just tell.
Yeah.
I didn't text him back. I text my sister. I called my brothers. I have 2 older brothers. My mom was married before my dad. So I have 2 older brothers. I talked to them. I talked to Jessica. I called my aunt, Kathy. She's like a mom to me. Called my grandparents. I talked to everybody except the guy that wanted to talk to me. And then it was like, I don't know, it was like maybe 3 weeks later. I was like, hey, I still need some time, So it definitely wasn't one of those happy reunions for me. My sister, totally different person though. She was just like, hey, let's talk. And I have too much going on to drop 32 years and just say, hey, let's talk.
So you were 32 years old at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was I don't know, it was probably about a month and a half actually before I finally was like, you know what, I'm gonna have a conversation with him. And because what him and my sister have talked about is absolutely nothing like what me and my family have talked about, how he was and what went on between him and my mom to make them separate. He has a 180-degree different story than what I've heard my entire life. So because of that, I'm thinking, well, either my family that I've known my entire life has been telling me falsehoods, or this guy that I've never met is telling me something false.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really I struggled with on who do I believe?
Yeah.
And Jessica's encouraging me the whole time to talk to him, see what he's about. My family still, I know my brothers were like, you still need to be cautious. You never know. He could just see that, you got a happy family on Facebook and he's trying to get some money out of you or something. But it was about a month and a half after he contacted me where I was like, you know what, let's talk.
Yeah.
And I know I had said something to you and Sean
did.
Howard just to pray for me, because there's a lot of emotions,
Yeah.
So it was a hard time. But I talked to him and I decided that if I have a grudge with somebody, I got to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have a grudge. I know that to have those grudges really poisons your life. And it's been 32 years without my dad. So why continue that?
Yeah.
There's no need to, if he's a good guy, we'll find that out in a relationship. You find out, that's the only way. You're going to find out if he's good or if he's bad. if everything that your family's told you over the past 32 years is the truth. I'm never going to know unless I have that relationship with him.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to do that unless I, one, forgive God.
Yeah.
Because through this, I was mad. And two, if I don't forgive him, then I will always go my entire life wondering, why now are you finally trying to get a hold of us?
Yeah.
You know, once again, my grandparents have lived at the same place for years. Why haven't you tried to get a hold of us in the past? And so I just don't want to live with hatred.
Yeah.
It just poisons you. And so I didn't. I learned I asked questions that I wanted to know answers to, and I trust that they are the truth from him, because he's there firsthand. He's never asked for money, so that's a plus. But it's just, I can't in my own life go through life having a grudge or not forgiving somebody, especially if I don't know the whole story of what happened. And I chose not to be that person that will just hate for the rest of my life and not have that relationship with somebody who wants to have a relationship just because I have my own selfishness. And I know for him it's a hard thing to reach out to your kids after so long being away. It wasn't just hard for me. Yeah. That's hard for him. And that's something I had to think about too, was he's the one that took that first step and said, hey, I'd like to talk.
Wow.
Wow. He didn't try to rush into anything. He didn't say, I got this time and this time, and if you don't respond, then it's over. And he's just like, take your time, man. I know it's hard.
Yeah. Terry, what led you to a place to where you maybe started to think, and I'll be careful I use my words here, but maybe you have to get to a spot to where you can forgive. How did that come about?
So in 2011, my dad was released from prison. He spent 17 years in prison. And every year before that, he was released. Once he was eligible for parole, I wrote a letter every year begging them not to release him. And it worked several times. And then when they released him, I had a nervous breakdown. I've shared that before. But I was absolutely convinced he was going to come and kill us, not just me, but my husband, and our youngest son was still living at home, and God could not protect me from him. Nobody could protect me from him. He was evil to me, and he was going to come and get us. So thought about even taking my own life just so that maybe if I was dead, maybe he wouldn't come after my family. I mean, Satan was just having a field day. And so that was in 2011, and just really struggling with that. Asked them to not let him move to Missouri because he was in Pennsylvania, and they let him move to Miami, Oklahoma, which is like an hour and a half away. And it was just horrible. And now he is in Missouri, but he has to register for the rest of his life, so I keep tabs. So then in 2011 that happened, and then in 2012 we got a knock on our door from Red Tree Church. They were meeting at a school right by our house. Literally would walk across the field to get to church, and seemed like a no-brainer. So we started attending Red Tree when it was like 30 people, and we walked in and had never served at a church before, had never really gotten plugged in, but it was just different there. And we started serving, and we started tithing, and everything just started changing. God just started changing us, and our marriage was getting better. And in September of that year, that was in April and September, you preached on forgiveness and preached about how God will forgive us the same way that we forgive others. And And I was like, wait a minute, I have to forgive somebody that's done these things to me? Doesn't seem right. And but you preached it in a way, and just talking about how God has forgiven us from so much, and thinking about this last week, and thinking about how I am so glad that I don't get to choose who gets forgiven, and because he is so much better at it than I am. And you preached about it, and I sent you a message at like 12:30 in the morning on an email, so it shouldn't have been, hopefully it didn't wake you up. But you responded the next day, and I was very vague in the email. I just was letting you know I was struggling with forgiving somebody. Do you have to love them? You said you have to love them. What if you love them, but you don't? What if you don't love them, but you don't hate them? Which was not true. I hated them. And you sent an email back to me, quoting different verses and helping me to kind of get into the understanding of it more. And yes, you do have to love them, but you don't love them the same way as, that you love Jessica, or, you love people differently. But one of the best ways to forgive somebody is to start praying for them. And which was just crazy to me, because to me, when I'm praying for somebody, it's somebody that I genuinely care about and really want the best for. And you actually said not to pray that something bad would happen to them. So,
been there, yeah.
You also said in that email that God is love, and in Scripture, God is always referred to as light, and that where light is, darkness cannot be. And I think that had one of the biggest impacts on me, because I was like, I am pursuing darkness with my hate. That's where I'm going, and I don't want to do that. I want to pursue light. So if that means I have to start praying for this man that was just so horrible to me, and has caused me, it was 20 years after I had left my dad's house. So, I was 14, and then I was 34 when we started coming to Red Tree. And it was like 20 years later, the damage of what had been done was still so bad. So I started praying for my dad that he would accept Christ. I prayed for my dad again this morning. I have no contact with my dad. I have no desire to have contact with him. It won't be a reunion type situation. But I ultimately came to a place where I realized that if my dad accepts Christ and my dad follows Christ, how awesome would that be? Like, that gives God the glory. That's not up to me getting my vindication or revenge. If somebody follows God, isn't that what matters most? I started realizing that, and that does not mean that I am, as Becky would say, pixie dust and unicorn rainbows or whatever. That doesn't mean that that's life now when I think about that. When I think about the things that happened, I still have horrible memories. I picture God there with me now, not happy about what's going on, but hurting with me. Sometimes I picture hitting him in the head with a baseball bat when I'm picturing those memories. And I was thinking about that this week. I'm like, maybe part of that is I'm trying to get the memory to stop. But as soon as I have that thought, I start praying. I take captive of that. I don't let that take over. And I'm really glad that when God thinks about my sin, that he doesn't picture hitting me with a baseball bat. He's loving and he's kind, and I want to be more like that. So it really started to heal, and this wall started to disappear between me and God. And Jessica, you might know her, started discipling me. And when she started discipling me, I started to really get into God's word more and understanding him more and understanding his love. And we started serving. And I would love to say we lived happily ever after, but there's been a lot of struggles, and it's still hard. And when you have a week like this where you're going to talk about this in front of everybody, it brings up all of that stuff again, because you have to relive it. But I know that this is important, because I know that a lot of you have had similar circumstances, or maybe not exactly the same. But if you can get to a place where the person that you are struggling to forgive, if you can truly turn it over to God and truly ask him to help you. I did not do this. Good grief. Nothing that I have in my life is because of me. I have no... 14-year-old Terri never thought she would be on a Red Tree church staff. 14-year-old Terri never thought she would be happily married. I had no clue. 14-year-old Terri never thought she would forgive her dad. You can do it with Christ, though. Yeah. He will help you. He will walk through it with you. Even when you're not doing it well, even when you're picturing the baseball bat thing, you know, he's there with you and he loves you through all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Gerald, do you have anything else to add to the conversation?
I just, I think that not forgiving somebody really can, as I said earlier, it really can poison your life. If I chose not to forgive my dad, then we, as a family, wouldn't have memories that we do now. You know, because you know, just because I decided that I'm just gonna put everything in God's hands and let Him decide how our relationship is gonna go with my family. We enjoy seeing each other. You know, we have had a couple of vacations where we go down to his house or he's come up to us, and it's been nice knowing that I don't harbor any resentment for the years lost that's in the past. You know, I take a look back and I realize that God has always been there with me, whether my dad was there or not. So from here on, I have to go forward. I have to move on with my life, and try to bring my family closer together on this walk with us.
Yeah. Hey, Red Tree, would you guys do me a favor? Would you let Terri and Gerald know how much you appreciate getting to hear from them this morning?
What is up, guys? Thank you so much for joining us online. If you made any type of decision today, we would love to hear your story either in the comments or you can email us at info@redtree.tv. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Love you guys.